Hello, good evening, and welcome again to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Carolyn Ward, and I'm sitting in again for Gabrielle Martin, who has finally arrived back in the country. So she'll be with you next month in July. But tonight, I get to invite a couple of people that I have known for quite a time. And when I was asked if I would host this evening and if I would think of who I would like to bring and what kind of conversation and what topic, one of the things that for me is really important is the journey for spirituality, or the reason of taking a path of spirituality for me is about the return to authenticity, to who I am, the freedom to just show up each day and be who I am without second guessing myself, without wondering if I'm enough, am I able to do it, should I be here, all those kind of questions. And for me, if that's not happening, then I'm off track with my understanding of spirituality. And I think that's very much what the artist is about finding an authentic voice. So when I was thinking, I thought, who would I love to invite? And two people came to mind. And in this last decade, we've seen the rise of what's called slam poetry. So the spoken word poetry. We see it in pubs. We saw it in the podium at the inauguration of the most recent US president. It's really taken a turn to bring poetry, which is like the speaking from the unconscious of the soul, clearing and bringing light and air into places we wouldn't otherwise be able to see. And this is the value of poetry on the spiritual journey. So let me introduce you to our two guests tonight. Both are ancient souls with modern journeys. Andy Travis is someone I've known for a few decades, and he's been meditating for more than 30 years and studying with the Brahma Kumaris. He works as a self-employed counsellor. A lot of his work he does also with men's groups and with men individually. He's an avid public speaker. He's been a community radio announcer, and he's also tried his hand at acting, stand-up comedy, which I've yet to see. But he found his passion when he found the spoken word poetry. So welcome to you, Andy, tonight. And Dolly, Andy's based in Victoria, but he's currently just completing a one-week silence retreat in New South Wales. So welcome from Wilton, Andy. Dolly Mahtani.
I have finished the silence.
You have, which is good, because it would be a very interesting conversation if you weren't speaking, right?
Spoken word mime.
Yeah. So our second guest is Dolly Mahtani, and Dolly's biodata, if you've read it, is wonderful. It describes really who she is, not so much by what she describes, but the fact that she says it in this way. So Dolly Mahtani is a professional dreamer from Barbados and Chile. And I have to say, congratulations, Dolly. It's 4 o'clock in the morning there, so you've got up early and you're with us. And Dolly is at the closest point to Antarctica, if you're not in Antarctica. So she's at the Straits of Magellan at the moment in Punta Arenas. So Dolly is a professional dreamer from Barbados and Chile, a writer, a poet, an aspiring novelist and screenwriter, a queer lover, a giver, an optimist, a rebel, a romantic, a breaker of paradigms and stereotypes, a spiritual social worker, an activist. Her purpose and passion is to elevate human consciousness, to help people remember who they really are, that kindness and beauty are inherent to us, and that they are the essence of us. They are closer to us than the very blood that courses through our veins. She's been published in several anthologies, including Poetry as a Spiritual Practice by Catherine Gosch, Jane Land by Candice Walsh, Hidden Lights by Carolyn Avalani, and in various magazines such as Go Mag, Curve, Hola Africa, Women's Spiritual Poetry, Wild Heart Writers, The Urban Howl, and Elephant Journal. She's currently in the process of writing her first novel. So big welcome to you, Dolly, all the way from the very, 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 very south of the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Caroline, for having me. It's quite cold, but happy to be here.
Yeah, terrific. So thank you both. I'm going to hand over to you both in just a moment, because you two have a lot in common. And I suspect things, when you get curious, you're going to find out you have different perspectives. And we're going to be eavesdropping a little on your conversation, very specifically about the journey to find your authentic voice, that this has been a passion. And then we're going to hear from you some of your poetry. And I believe, and I know, that you're going to invite those who are listening to do some reflective work around that poetry as well. And I'm going to do a couple of meditations, and one of them is going to be using that reflective work when we get to the end of the session. So I'm going to say adios, goodbye, for a moment, and I'm going to hand over to the two of you. And let's begin by exploring, like, what is authenticity and how did you come to do it, kind of explore it through poetry and spoken word poetry? Over to both of you. Thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Carolyn. Yeah, I got to admit, I feel kind of blank on it right now, because I've never really set out deliberately to create authenticity as a goal in itself. But I think what played out for me was just realizing that through different challenges in my life, I needed to find new ways to explore what it means to be human, what it means to be a spirit living a human life. And so there's no big insights from coming from me at the moment. Just glad to be here. I don't know if you have any bright ideas, Dolly.
Well, funny enough, I think I did set out to find authenticity through poetry. So for me, like as a kid, like think about it, as a kid, what is authenticity? You don't wonder about that, you know, am I being authentic as a child? But what I realized growing up is that because of my upbringing, because it was so, I used to go to this Sunday school. I grew up in Hinduism, right, with my family. And they always used to they used to tell us what to do, but they wouldn't explain why. And I was that kid that wanted to know why about everything. Sure, I don't mind doing this, but why? And no one could tell me why. And then I realized that as I grew up, I was doing a lot of things just because I was told that this is how, you know, you do them. And then I feel like the more we do that, the more you kind of lose track of, you know, your truth, your way of doing things, your essence. So I grew up with a lot of that, and I didn't understand it at the time, until it became so loud. Like there's this quote I love by Anais Nin, and she says that at one point it hurt the flower more to stay in the bud than it did to blossom. You know, so at some point it's like, I need to get out, I need to blossom. So I deliberately searched for the truth. I had no idea what it was, but I was like, it's not this, I need to find it. And that was my journey. It was really a spiritual journey. And through that journey, I discovered poetry. And I always think that I remember there was a sister once that told me that, you know, like God or Baba, he has everyone. He has chefs and teachers and dancers and singers, and he has poets. And she used to tell me, you are one of his poets. So I feel like everybody has this form of self-expression that does allow you to discover, I would say explore, like, because Caroline gave this really good intro about, you know, the path on spirituality, how it mitigates all those questions that we have, those doubts. So it's like, how does this help me understand myself? So poetry has been that for me. It's been this outlet, this expression, this best friend, this teacher, this guide, this public, this audience, and many other things. But I like it because it's always changing. You know, I don't know if you've experienced that, Andy, with your writing, that it evolves with you. It changes as you do.
Yeah, and I'll often go back and look at a poem again, and no, I can just tweak it here, I can tweak it there, and it becomes somehow more true for me as I do that, as I change. So my poems don't stay fixed. Little improvements happen along the way as I get better understanding.
Yeah, and you can read, like, I read poems that I wrote 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and then yesterday, and it's like, wow, you changed, you know. Your poems change, your writing, your style changes, and it's beautiful to look at that, because that is who you were in the moment, and this is who you are. So it gives you like that clear picture.
I'm reminded, as you were talking, I was reminded of one particular poem I've got in my collection of possible poems to share tonight, and for me it's about shadow work and realizing that I can't just deny my darkness. I can't just fly away from it. I have to make friends with it. So I don't know if now's an appropriate time to. This is probably my answer about finding my authentic voice. Is now a good time, Carolyn, to share this poem?
Yeah, I think it's a great time. I guess I'd like to ask you a little, or maybe a poem's going to answer, because I wanted to ask you, you know, you're someone that I've known over time who is so honest on your own personal healing journey, on your journey of, I think, truth seeking. Like you're raw in your honesty. And why do you do that? Why are you so honest? What is it that makes you strip into the shadows? And what are you going for when you get it? What are you going away from? Yeah.
I'm reminded of a saying I first heard in a 12-step meeting, an addiction recovery meeting, and the saying is, excuse my French, I can't save my face and my ass at the same time. And for me, I think I've reached such points of, you know, sort of darkness and lostness that I realized that and another 12-step saying is, I'm only as sick as my secrets. So it's been this purging, I guess. And I don't like to overdo that. And I'm always very cautious about where's the best place to do that kind of release. But poetry has been a place for that for me, definitely. And my hope is that anyone that resonates with any of the pieces is able to go, oh, okay, wow, that's a method that's worked for him. Maybe that person will be inspired by that. I hope so. Because I know that the only way I can get well is by helping others get well too.
And so the get well is what? It's about getting real, it's about healing, or is the healing you have to get real in order to heal? Well, there's a bumper sticker if ever I heard one.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So why do you get real? Why do you get real?
Because in bringing light into the darkest areas, then my experience is that addiction can no longer survive, because it connects me with humanity instead of isolates me from humanity. Because from my experience is direct experience of addiction and depression means that there's isolation there as a foundation. And if I can connect, then I am no longer, there's no longer that sort of place where those darker aspects of the self can grow.
It's interesting what you said about the, what was it? I'm only as sick as my secrets.
I'm only as sick as my secrets, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm reminded of Brene Brown when she talks about shame hides in the shadows. It's best friends with fear. But when you bring light to it and it's shared and there's empathy as a response, shame can't live. It just dissipates. So I think what we're talking about is this kind, well, for me, as I listen to you, it's a kind of like a yearning to come to freedom, to be free from the sorrows, the things that trap us and bind us, and it's a very personal thing for each one of us. You know, maybe your addiction is different and it shows up differently from mine, but it's all of our kind of trying to survive in a world that's often very hard. So, Andy, why don't you read us your poem?
Sure.
We're going to spotlight you fully.
I'm going to take the headphones out for a sec because I'm getting really hot.
Okay.
That's better.
Okay.
Who's afraid of the big bad wolf? There's no such thing as darkness, only lack of light. So I hid in the light, thinking perfecting my persona was perfecting my soul, unaware that my beauty can never be free until she loves my beast. Cursed and lonely, he fought for my attention, but none are as blind as those who now see. In the end, he blew my house down so many times, I invited him in for tea. He told me Carl Jung once said, I'd rather be whole than good. So I took off my sheep's clothing, howled with my new friend in our grief, and together we followed a moonlit path through misty woods to the lake of self-forgiveness. Under this water, my light, my darkness, my beauty, my beast, dissolves into grace, and we're one.
Beautiful, Andy. I really love the line, my beauty can never be free until she loves my beast. And I'd rather be whole than good. That's a whole discussion right there. Amazing. I once heard, I can't remember who the poet was, that said, I'd rather be true than good. So that goes back to what we were talking about, about the courage to be yourself versus fitting in.
It's a pretty long journey, I think, for any spiritual aspirant, because whether in a mainstream religion or something alternative, there's a whole lot of things that are culturally within that particular group. And so taking on those cultural things is part of the support of being in the community, and ultimately they're still on the surface. And so over and over again, for me, it's been like trying to find a deeper form of expression of that particular path and expanding into new areas and just finding what works for me.
I like the lyrical composition of it too. What led you to come up with that? Like you kind of remade the Little Red Riding Hood
Three Little
story.
Pigs. Three Little Pigs.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just emerged. It just emerged, realizing, yeah. And there's a couple of metaphors that maybe I'll. What I love about metaphors is they can mean different things for different people. But for me, there's a line in there. Together we followed a moonlit path. For me, that was when I started doing 12-step recovery. That was the moonlit path. And through Misty Woods was doing step 4 and continuing to do step 10, which are both about shining a light on the most ugly parts of my character. So if you can imagine a sort of a spooky, misty woods and following a path through it, that was my experience doing step 4 and continuing to try to sort of do the self-checking of step 10.
Amazing. I also have a poem, since we're on this topic, about shadow self, about the things that we don't really talk about. I can share that, and then we can take it from there. How's that sound?
Can't wait.
All right. So this poem is called Breaking to Become. It goes like this. I seek the wreckage somehow. I have a masochistic streak. If self-sabotage were considered an employable skill, I'd be a rich consultant by now. I can tell you over 173 ways off the top of my head on how to break yourself. Hurt someone that loves you. Disappoint your mother. Don't do what you promised. Leave a friend stranded. Imagine 10 different ways someone you're upset with could die. I don't believe in hate. Refuse to walk the dog. It's not even yours. Lie to your boss. Lie to your friends. Lie to yourself. Don't prepare the wedding speech. It's not like she loves him. Get drunk instead and pass out on the dance floor. Tell her that he's cheating. Eat yourself to death. Vegetate on a bed watching Netflix. Don't paint your walls. Don't dare to dream. Fit in, comply, agree, don't deny. I'm guilty of these things. Others are just things I should have done. The things I maybe wanted to do at some point, but I didn't. I couldn't. I wasn't raised that way. I was raised to swallow things no matter what. I always tried to do what was right. I'd always sacrifice. I dug a hole so deep that 6 feet under felt like a relief. I've died in life so many times, over and over and over again. There goes another piece of me. Sometimes I get the privilege of mourning it. Now, this is my path, my habit, my religion, my routine. God, it's so scary. I have no idea who I'm going to wake up to be. When I sleep, the confusion sets in. I lose consciousness of who I am. Who am I really? I wish I could go back to being ignorant sometimes. It's hard. It's so hard to stay awake, to deliberately allow the break just to get to the depths of you, to discover truth. I seek transformation. I seek peace. I seek love. I seek unity. I've walked down many paths only to learn they've always been within. But the ego, of course, wouldn't let me see. It needed me to search externally. Who am I really? Every day I discover something new. I'm never the person I think I am. I'm a good person, a brave woman, a great friend. At the same time, I am none of these, not really. 5 years ago, if you had asked me who I really was, I'd laugh at the person I've become. I'd laugh so damn hard. I'm the one that quits her job to spend all day in bed with her girl, the hopeless romantic, the one who sees signs in everything, the one who can't stand routine, not even a little bit. Every day she brushes her teeth differently just to prove it. The one who is broken by the sorrow of others and brought to tears by their joy. The one who scoffs at religion, bhakti, and sacred positions. The one who wants to be liked by all but loved by one. The one that needs no one else to entertain herself, that lives in awe. Every breath, every person, every pixel, every photon is a miracle. The one that sees the invisible web that connects us all. The one that avoids the sorrow because it is so familiar. The girl that seeks color, that falls for the wild heart. Where to go from here? I've let go of everything I know. I'm falling, heart sinking, body floating, just resting on the trust of friends, the good wishes of strangers. Letting go is what I hold on to. Breaking must be just another word for rising.
Wow. Okay, so I have questions, and then I want us to do a meditation, because I can say I feel uncomfortable having listened to both your poems. It's like I go, oh, it's kind of pulling and pushing at things inside of me that are recognizing some of the things that you're speaking. So I want to ask you a question about the process of spoken word poetry, because if someone came along tonight on the basis of, oh, this is about poetry, this doesn't sound like poetry. Shelley and Keats and Donne and, Cummings and Mary Oliver. It's getting close with Mary Oliver, but it's like raw. It's like it's very authentic. I mean, for me, this is about revelation and real. And it's like telling the world your whole story. Maybe not your whole story. So how is that poetry? And how is it helpful for you and for others? It's amazing, and thank you. Yeah.
I really love that it's made you uncomfortable, because I think that's the point, right? At least certain poems, that's why I love slam poetry. Like, Andy, like slam poetry, slam comes from that impact, it's a poetry that is made to punch you, to cause an impact. That's the goal. However you want to use it, I guess everybody has like a different approach to it, but the way I've taken it is a form of self-expression, a form of self-discovery, exploration, truth, courage, authenticity, and a way to connect with others on a very deep level, because we don't really, like, at least in my environment, I don't have spaces where I can speak about these things with other people. So I created through my poetry. I read these poems and I open a space to have a conversation about, whatever it is I'm sharing. So that's what moved me. That's what moves me. It's like creating that space to have that conversation. I have poems about the time I tried to commit suicide. I have poems about the binge eating I used to do in my teenage years. I have poems about like everything. So they're very raw, they're very vulnerable, but they're honest. And writing them also was a whole therapy for me, I would say, to get them on paper and then to read them. Just, we were talking about this earlier, like the truth sets you free. I always used to think these are the things that are unlovable about me, or that no one would accept of me. And then you write them, you share them, and you're accepted and you're loved. And you realize it's not the end of the world. So that was a revelation to me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Andy, can you respond to the same question, or you want me to give you a new one?
Oh, I was keen to ask Dolly, where were you 5 years ago? You mentioned in the poem that 5 years ago you would have laughed And I'm just curious to know, what's the difference between 5 years ago Dolly and current day Dolly?
I'm glad you asked that. I was in the Brahma Kumari Center. I wrote that poem while I was in the Brahma Kumari Center. I was living in the center. And that was just something I'd never imagined, myself doing in my life. So it was like, wow, this is incredible and crazy at the same time.
Okay, so let's then jump to a meditation, because I think that if we're using the fact that this kind of poetry impacts us, slaps us around a bit, wakes up some things. And I know, Dolly, you've got other poems which you've read to me over the years, which aren't all about the torture and the tragedy. They're also about the joy and the illumination that takes place. So it is about shaking loose some of the things that are very tight on us in order to free us up to experience what is really deep inside. So let's just do a short reflection before we move into some more poetry and deep exploration. So those of you who are a little like me and have felt yourself resisting or reacting or being triggered or moved, whatever has happened for you, just take a moment, if you will, and be with those sensations without naming, judging, or trying to get rid of them or fix them or change them. So just observing what's sitting inside your awareness, inside your body. Noticing if you're feeling whatever you're feeling, just noticing it. It might be relief. It might feel like someone's speaking about me, telling my story. It might be, this has nothing to do with me. This isn't spirituality. What are we doing? Whatever it is that's happening for you, it's your world and it's all totally fine. Just observe it. Be with it. Let it be there. And take a nice, deep, spacious breath into the place within you that's being impacted, being slammed. Whether that's a positive slam or a slam that doesn't feel so comfortable. Just breathe into that and let the breath bring a bit of distance between you and whatever is happening with you. And as you continue to breathe very easily and naturally, with that sort of easy distance between you and the impact, just leaving some space for this authentic response to be. Whilst also allowing yourself to have some space from the impact while still honoring what has arisen. With this distance, with whatever it is that has arisen for you, if you were able to feel compassion and kindness, and direct it to that part of yourself that's responded, that's arisen. How might that feel? If you could, and do you notice that compassion and kindness and that flow of energy also impacts? And what does it do? What happens? And as you continue to just breathe naturally, normally, and with ease, allowing the breath to wrap and infuse compassion and kindness, love, understanding into that which is present for you right now. In a moment, we're going to come back from this sort of silent, reflective bubble. And we asked you to bring along a pen and a piece of paper with you, that old-fashioned way of writing. I'd like to ask you to just take a few moments now as you find your way back. Feel your body, feel your feet, maybe on the floor, or if you've cross-legged underneath you. And just take a minute or two just to write anything that you noticed. Anything, and maybe allow metaphors to come in. You know, it was like a volcano, or it was like a river that was let free from the dam, or it was a flower blossoming, or, you know, it was a tram that was running on the tracks, or whatever comes to mind. There's no right and no wrong. It's just a place to explore words, images, metaphors of what rose up for you in this first half an hour or so. And then what was the experience as you sat with some distance and offering to honor this experience at Rose with some kindness. So just for 1 or 2 minutes, just write some thoughts, feelings. That was a very short amount of time. And we're going to do a few more of these this evening with Dolly and Andy's poems. I want to bring them back into the screen now because I want to share something that I saw, a clip on Instagram recently where Ethan Hawke was saying something that I'd love you to comment on. And he was saying, you know, what's the value of human creativity? So Ethan Hawke is a very well-known actor, right? So what's the value of human creativity? Who cares, you know, about your poetry or Allen Ginsberg poetry or, you know, anyone's poetry really? Your life just is going along until maybe your father dies or you lose a child, you go to a funeral, someone breaks your heart, you are lost, completely despairing, and you just want to know, did anyone else ever feel this bad? And if so, what are the words they use to describe it? And how do you not feel alone in what is happening with you, inside you, around you? Or conversely, that, you know, you never felt so amazing in your life, someone's blown your mind and you're so happy, or, you know, you've been traveling the world, maybe not the last 2 years, but you've been traveling, like the beauty and the connections and the wonderment and the magic. And then you get to see that reflected again in poetry. Then you make sense and you make meaning, and someone else has trodden the path ahead of you and they help you make meaning out of something that cannot be logically kind of packaged up. So I love this idea that in some ways what you do, you guys, you gal, you know, are these machete makers through the jungle of human consciousness. And, you know, it's never, like you said this, Andy, you know, going through the misty kind of forest, and the moonlit misty forest, you know, like, wow, you know, make your inventory, get real, who have you harmed? Like, that's raw, real, authentic. It's not pop spirituality. It's not, you know, turning up to a ritual and going home feeling good. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of what you're doing and what you're experiencing? And I think you could talk to this, Andy, with your 12-step programs, and Dolly with your, you know, your sharing through poetry of your story. How important it is to, you talked about not isolating, Andy. So how important it is to have company on this journey, even while trying to find your own voice. How important is it not to feel alone, and how does poetry really help with that? And I want to just say to people now who are listening, please send us, if you've got questions, doesn't matter, you've heard them, they're prepared to kind of speak very honestly. Please ask your questions, send them through, and we'll pick them up and I'll pass them on to Dolly and Andy. So can you two kind of talk about this journey to authenticity that goes in a crowd somehow? You'll need to unmute, yeah.
There's one poem that spells out my experience of doing 12-step recovery, and it's the poem that I'm most afraid of sharing. And my first poetry teacher, my first spoken word poetry teacher said, that poem, the one that you don't want to share, that's probably the one that's best to share, because it's probably the conversation that needs to be had. So I don't really have an answer, but before I chicken out, when the conversation's done, I'm happy to share this poem that's the scary one to share.
Or maybe share and then have the conversation.
Sure.
So you really can't chicken out.
Yeah. Just trying to think if there's any explanation. I don't think it needs an explanation. How I got addicted to pornography and how I'm healing from it. Two-dimensional, so easy, yet utterly unattainable. Stirring a primal thirst which only a mirage could quench. So far outside the real world that I was gone, not home, and the only light on burned straight from the screen into my soul. Obsess, crave, resist, act, regret. Obsess, crave, resist, act, regret. Again and again and again. My brain, a pink-eyed mouse on a dopamine treadmill, spinning off its axis and into the jaws of a snake as old as Adam and Eve. There had to be something in there, a payoff so powerful that all that drained time, all that isolation, all that shame was worth it. Oblivion, to lose myself, to shake free from all the things I believed were right and to just consume instead, to burn like a dying sun, hoping that in the end my star would collapse back past the Big Bang. Despite years of intense meditation, countless new starts and promises, despite trying Prozac, hypnotherapy and psychic guidance, my star was collapsing. My gravity greater than my outward force. And on the other side, 12 stepping stones across the poison river, a river I have to keep crossing every day. 1, hi, my name's Andy and I need help. 2, I cannot get better by myself. 3, whoever you are that holds this room of people together, please put me back together. 4, I dug with my pen and sifted through the fine sand of all memories, dusting off trauma's fragments, piecing together new meaning with the glue of self-responsibility. 5, every relic, every sharp edge, every incomplete skeleton, exhumed and witnessed. 6, made ready for release. 7, whoever you are that's inspiring this shadow archaeology, please take my axes, my predator's teeth and bones. They've rattled around inside me long enough. 8, whom have I hurt? Healing inside, how can I help healing outside? 9, brave conversations, gentle text messages, incognito prayers, responses ranging from venom to, I don't even remember, let it go. 10, a renovated house still needs maintenance, mostly just self-checking and giving up the need to be right. 11, whoever you, with a capital Y, are, I'm remembering you. 12, and I hope that this poem may give another collapsing star hope. Epilogue. Today my devices are locked from adult content because in my head, porn's players were fantasy, not humanity, washing me down the river of disconnection and using women. No thanks. And who do I want to be for my beloved? Man or pink-eyed mouse?
Wow. Thanks for sharing, Andy. I love number 12. Giving a collapsing star hope.
Yeah, the theme emerged around, the sort of archetypal story of the hero's journey of going into the underworld or being dismembered and then put back together, or phoenix rising from the ashes. So somehow this idea of a collapsing star, part of the process of renewal meant a complete collapse, and that seemed to fit. And when a big enough star collapses, it causes a supernova. So the original collection that poem was in was called Supernovas and Sacred Spaces.
Amazing. Well, that's the beauty of poetry, right? Isn't it? Like I feel like it's just like meditation. You can put your intention to it and you will find the answer in it. Like Caroline, back to the conversation you were saying earlier, like there's a poet, a Chilean poet, Pablo Neruda. He wrote a poem called Ode to an Onion. And it's an amazing poem, and it's all about an onion, and it's poetry has that way of making just seemingly ordinary things extraordinary, and there's that quote that you can live life either, where everything is extraordinary or everything is not. So how do you see it? I feel like poets have this ability to see the world differently. There's this other poet, Vicente Huidobro. He's also a Chilean poet. He has this poem I love. He says that may the verse be a key that opens 1,000 doors. Everything that is under the sun is just for us to observe. And he calls the poet a tiny god, because I think to be a poet you have to be an observer. So that's how you come about it. And poetry also has this way of, so they're the poems that you write, and they're the poems that are written through you. Have you had that experience, Andy? Like a poem that has just come to you, like you don't know where or why or when?
Yeah, similar. Sometimes I've just really worked on a poem and just honed it and honed it and honed it.
Same, yeah.
And other times, usually when something's facilitated a very sort of creative, very receptive space, then the poem emerges within half an hour, and it is as it is. And sometimes it's
perfect.
A particular writing
definitely.
that's artistic, so it's on paper, it's in an artistic design, some sort of visual art, and it's like, there it is. It is how it is. And that's only occasionally has that happened for me, but it's been remarkable. And no less of a poem or no worse of a poem, even though it had no editing. That's the closest I've come to that experience.
A different experience, right? So they're the poems that we write because we want to get, stuff out of our backpack and off of our chests. But then they're poems that there are a lot of poems that just come to me. It's through me. It's like, I need to put this on paper, and I don't know where they come from. And I was like, I don't know if I should take credit for this poem, but yeah, I mean, that's my name. And I love that exploration. So I would like to share a poem today about that. It's literally about this woman I once saw at a bus stop. I saw her, and then I went into meditation, and I was like, I need to go get my notebook because I had to write this poem. And in like 10 minutes, I'd written this poem. And up till today, it's one of my favorite poems because it's like, I feel like someone else wrote it, and I just get to recite it. I'm going to share it, and then I'd like to do a little kind of exercise with everyone who's with us. Because I always say this, but everyone is a poet, whether we believe that or not. Everybody has this ability to write, to express their thoughts, their feelings into words. So I'm going to do a little exercise after the poem so that you can feel what I know to be true, which is there is poetry in each and every one of you. All right, so this poem is called The Eternal Beauty of You. It goes like this. Let me just, okay, there we go. Look at you. Wow, just look at you. You've made sadness an artist and gave your face away as a canvas, and he has done a masterpiece with it. The thing is, you've forgotten who you are, and now you believe you are his work of art. But sweetheart, I am here to tell you that you are not. Take your pieces back, reclaim yourself. I see through it, all that bullshit you call real. I see the raw, fierce beauty that lives underneath all that paint. I see it wanting to be seen. I see it. I see you, and you are exquisite. How you manage to will yourself asleep to play the part of the devil's muse every day, I will never know. Without speaking, you're asking if it's okay for you to fall down all the way, knees melting from the impact, flesh meeting earth, to revert back to your chemical composition. Oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, calcium, you're all there, and there is nothing more than this, nothing else. You're tired of you're tired of trying to convince yourself that there is. You can't take a second more of pretending, of trying, of smiling, of nodding, gossiping, and comparing. You want out of the contract you signed with blood the minute you were born. You want to be at peace. You need to be at peace. I respect and worship the power in your grit. Do you know your worth, love? Do you know your truth, love? Because they know you and they're waiting, just waiting for you. There in the silence, in the tender moments, when you get tired of carrying all that weight, when you think no one is watching and you let it go, you take it off and slip into the subtle version of you, that being of truth that knows your vastness, your expansiveness, your reach. You are the answer to every question you've ever had. Why are you living so shallow? What keeps you so scared? Why is it so easy to be so little when you have everything coursing through you? Tell me, talk to me, spill your secrets. I want to love you. All that means is I want to be who I am around you. I want you to meet me here, to stand firmly on honest ground, to say who you are out loud. I am love. I am joy. I am bliss. I am beauty. Say each one out loud and soak into it. You know it's true. I feel it in you. Don't look away for validation. You don't even need to believe me. All you have to do is remember. You beautiful goddess creature, just remember where you came from. Dim the lights and close your eyes and let yourself fly. Go wherever you want to go, away from the drama, from the roles, away from the mundane, from the everyday. In the silence, let the truth speak. Let your heart tell you what you came here to do. You crave to be something the world has never seen. So ask yourself honestly, what's stopping you? So I'd like to invite you in this moment um, to take a few minutes and write down aspects of the beauty of you. What is the beauty of you? What comes to mind after this poem in terms of what connects with you? So, what is your own truth? That's what I'd like to invite you to write about. Just an extra note, if you've already finished, if you've written about your beauty, ask yourself, what is stopping you from expressing this? How could you blossom into this beauty? How could you show it more in the world? How could you show up with it?
So Dolly, thank you for that poem. I loved meeting the woman on the bus.
Right.
Oh my gosh. And was she a woman that you saw in Chile on the bus? Because
Yeah, literally, I
I
was
had
walking.
her in my mind. I was there. Wow. Wow, she was amazing. And yeah, I get what you say about that just came through you, the way that it all unfolded. So beautiful.
It
I
was like
loved
a
it. Thank
soul
you.
message from me to her, from my soul
Yeah,
to her.
yeah,
I
yeah,
loved it.
really. And
The
so
spirit.
let me ask you a question. You asked us to write some things there. Would you suggest we do anything with that afterwards? With that, we might use it for our final meditation, but do we do anything with that tomorrow and the next day?
Honestly, it's yes, like you can start building a list, because for me, for example, I've struggled a lot with describe like use discovering my beauty, my joy, my self-love. So I used it this I now can describe myself in many ways because I used to make a list, like the things that make me beautiful. I made a list. So I would use that as a kind of as a guide to start building your list of all the things, that make you beautiful, joyful, peaceful, blissful, lovable. Um, and that can be used towards a poem, it can be used towards a meditation, it can be used towards an affirmation. There are many different uses for it, but I think just the building the practice of of being aware and standing in your virtues, your qualities. This is a great practice to have.
Mm. Yeah, because we've kind of been conditioned and got many lists inside our heads that tell us why we're not beautiful, right? That's an easy go-to. So it's really
Or
important to
what
have.
beautiful actually is, like the status quo,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And but really and truly, like, kindness is beautiful.
Mm,
This is beautiful. I am
yeah,
silent for I'm beautiful. I'm kind for I'm beautiful, right? So it's
yeah.
connecting all these things and redefining what beauty is, really and truly. We don't have to follow the dictionary definition of it. We can redefine it. And what is it to me, and how do I feel most beautiful? Beauty is it's such a profound feeling I've found in my experience to really experience beauty. Wow, like nature is beauty to me. And to think that I have something in common with flowers and trees and sky and birds, that is profound, that's deep, that's so beautiful.
I remember at a retreat, we did an exercise. Someone went, go out into nature and find something, bring it back, and then write, And of course, what you're writing is actually about yourself. But there was one woman who was there from Malaysia, and she brought back this tiny, tiny little yellow flower, but so tiny, like the size of my fingernail. Very tiny. And that's what caught her eye in this big sort of forest. And it was very profound for her because it called her, And when she wrote about it, how tiny it was and delicate and but power, all the things she wrote. It was yellow, but it stood out and it made the forest complete from its beauty. And she said it wasn't until she'd done that exercise that she herself felt like she had value, because she was small, insignificant. She wasn't that pretty, but this made the forest complete. Then she made the world complete. It was so beautiful,
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so we've got time, I think, for your poem, Andy, that was born out of your silence. Can we hear that? And then we're going to finish with a bit of a meditation. If you've got some questions, I've kind of woven a couple of questions together in what we've just been talking about. But if there are any other questions, please send them through and we'll certainly put them to Andy and Dolly or. So you okay, Andy, to share with us your most recent poem that has come from the vessel of silence?
Yeah, thank you. I'd be very honoured to. It's about my dad, who died at the age of 94 last September. Little boy is led by his mother into the Canberra Times hive in the city. So my dad was a print journalist, passing chattering telex machines. He sees 3 clocks high on the wall labelled London, Canberra, New York. He can feel the pulse of the globe. News. Mum melts away. Father proudly introduces son to some nearby colleagues. Little boy stands behind his dad, reading over his shoulder. It's the first time the boy's seen a real-life computer. He's impressed by the cursor's ability to make words appear and disappear. Son points out some typos. Father thanks him and corrects them. Son returns with mother to the car, which is filled with two sisters and his ordinary world. Little boy feels a foot taller. Dear Dad, you are witty, charming and confident, intelligent, articulate and ethical. Your teeth-wide grin, beefy baritone and twinkling blue eyes could reach every corner of a room. When I was a kid, safe in the car at our local shops, I watched you jump out and break up a fist fight between two teenagers, ringed by a handful of fired-up mates. You strode through. Are you all right, mate? You asked of the losing combatant. Your compassion for him diffused the whole scene. I've never met a person who put reason so far ahead of emotion. Your sister and brother-in-law had a border collie puppy called Lucy. She kept killing chickens. You said to Uncle George, on a farm, a dog like that's got to be shot. I know, he replied, but I don't have the heart. Can you? You could, and you did. Years later, when you told me this story, I asked, how did you feel as you were shooting the dog? You said, my arms were a bit shaky. You were critical, grumpy, and dogmatic. But what I think a lot of us remember most was your delight upon greeting us. As your dementia and general health worsened, Mum and your Canberra daughters particularly had scrambled to care for you. Sometimes your heart of gold would beam out, calling me sunshine, spelt S-O-N, or exclaiming with heart-wrenching vulnerability, thank you for all your help, and your wounding words would be forgiven again. You believed that maybe there was a God, but you were certain that when you died, your consciousness would be snuffed out. You saw phrases like passed away as inaccurate and sentimental euphemisms spoken by people who deceive themselves that death isn't final. Perhaps you could indulge in this, dear dead Dad, that your snuffed out spirit will at least reincarnate at the very small point where the tips of the pens of your kids, grandkids, and office cadets meets the page.
Thank you. That very much moved me, and it's so interesting that that's what emerged from your week of silence.
Isn't it? Yeah, I agree.
You know? So, and you know, for anyone listening, and you know, maybe early on it all seemed a bit murky and shadowy in there, but then the beautiful woman, you know, and then this young boy becomes the man, follows the father. I mean, it's also incredibly, some of the things I wrote in the reflection, like you weave it together so that at the end, you know, something other emerges that is very enriching, nourishing. I feel healing, but that's a word for me. Dolly, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, that's, for me, that's the power of, and the beauty of poetry, of the spoken word. Because one thing is the written word, but the spoken word, because it's spoken, you know, the feeling and of our thoughts, and through the words and the vibration, the frequency, the collection of energy, you know, it creates this atmosphere always. And it's different. I love that. It's so for you, you know, it was this roller coaster, you know, of sensations and feelings. For other people, it's a catharsis. For other people, it's healing. For other people, it's community. It's like not being seen and knowing that they're not alone, and it can be everything and anything at the same time. And I love that. I love that a lot about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to suggest that we have a short meditation now before we close up. And I've asked Peter to leave you two on the screen. Pete, you can remove me. And because I think what I've seen tonight is that both of you have been so transparent. You know, like this, the beauty of transparency, of rawness, of honesty, of no pretense, just this who I am, authentically you. And so I'm going to ask to leave you on the screen, and I'll speak a few words by way of reflection as we close. And then I'll come back and say some words to finish as well. And I'll talk about what's next as much as I can. Does that sound okay to both of you?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so you just have to be, and that's it, nothing much more. Thank you. Okay, so those of us sitting, looking, feeling, resonating, resisting, or just being with whatever. Two human beings being with us all, being with them. Us, them, collapses, disappears. No other. We've shared a sacred space. Your beauty, mine, ours. Shadows, misty pathways. Sad, afraid, proud. A landscape. Each one part of that vista, part of that world. Each one of us making it complete. Because we are. However we are, we are. And we are together. Thank you both so much. Is there anything that you'd like to say by way of closing off before we head over to next month? I know that we've got a link for some of Andy's meditations, which should be lovely. So that's going to be sent out into the chat box in YouTube. So anyone who would like to explore some meditations, Andy's got some there. So we're popping that in the chat box now in YouTube. What
Thanks,
would you like
Carolyn.
to say to close?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks, Carolyn. You've brought a real warmth. It's been like being sort of snuggled into a doona with Carolyn's voice kind of corralling us and taking us new places. So I really appreciate it. Peace.
Yeah, thank you so much, Caroline.
That's it.
Yeah, well, I would like to just encourage everyone to, poetry might not be everyone's expression for their authenticity, but it is a beautiful outlet. And if it hasn't been explored yet, I would highly encourage it as a way to be honest and vulnerable and truthful. And then to just continue to explore, you know, the authentic voice, the truthful voice, because I feel like that's something that is always looking to come out. It's always looking for a way to express itself. So let life be the searching for that until you find it.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Thank you, Dolly.
Something I was inspired in our preparation for this, Dolly, I was inspired by you saying that you tend to take a pad and pen to poetry events, and after each poem you'll jot down your experience or your feelings, which is what you facilitated tonight. And so with those jottings anyone made tonight, then they may end up in a further, more polished part of writing. So I plan to do that next time I go to a poetry event as well. I'll jot down things after each one.
Even to my meditations, I used to have a little pen and paper. Always, I literally in my pocket, I always have a notebook and a pen, because you never know.
And because you're a writer. You're a writer. Okay, thank you so much, both of you. That brings us to the close for this month to Youniverse. Andy Travis and Dolly Mahtani, and being so generous with their spirits and their work, their lives, their souls. Thank you. Remember, hey, it's this sounds like an ad now, but it's end of financial year, and Eternity Inc. that supports Brahma Kumari's students and anyone who is exploring these spiritual ideas. They usually have a kind of end of financial year sale on, which is crazy because they already have not-for-profit prices, but beautiful quality books. There's some poetry books there as well, CDs, DVDs, I think the things that nourish us. So have a look online, www.eternityinc.com.au. If you want to subscribe to Youniverse and you haven't already done that, shoot us an email at special.events. You can see it on the screen at au.brahmakumaris.org. So you can see that, and you'll get a link and an invitation to every episode. The next episode of Open Your Eyes to the Universe is Saturday, the 23rd of July, 6 to 7:30 p.m. And at this point, it's a surprise. We don't know who's going to be on, but Gabriel will be back with you, both wrists working in working order. So it's been a great pleasure for me to sit in for Gabrielle and work with the team here, who's just extraordinary behind the scenes. And I look forward to seeing you when I see you again. Until then, follow the words of the great poets, be the observer, like look with a different perspective and see what's speaking to you, to your own inner world, and enjoy. Thanks and good night.